Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Pow.
support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
is Monday, March 9, 2023. Up on Roland Martin, streaming live on the Black Star Network. So, Republicans talking about woke. The majority of Americans no problem with woke. We'll talk with the pollster about the poll showing that Republicans are blaming diversity, equity, and inclusion for the train derailment in Ohio. Really? And continue to say that. Well, on Capitol Hill, Minnesota President Nelson does all that more on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, all we've dealt with over the past couple of years has been the consistent attacks by Republicans on woke. Now, what they've done, which I've warned y'all about, they have tried to label everything woke. Woke basically is the N word for them. And so when critical race theory, they want to put everything under the woke banner as a way to attack diversity, equity, and inclusion. But is it working? So a new poll lays to bear that a majority of Americans got no problem with woke. They understand what it means. This particular poll, folks, was really important. Because it lays out exactly where we stand. A USA Today IPSOS poll found Americans, divided, but a majority actually understand exactly what it means and what the goal is. Here to explain the breakdown of the poll, Chris Jackson. He is a senior vice president with IPSOS. Chris, glad to have you here. So, Chris, walk us through these poll results and what they mean, because, again, they have what's really stands out. Young voters get it. So Republicans, they're trying to push the buttons of white fear of older white voters, but they're losing young voters huge numbers.
Yeah, I think what this poll shows is that for most Americans, this is a little bit of a sideshow. For most people, they're focused on practical concerns like how are they going to pay their bills? How are they going to get their kids to school? How are they going to be able to take that vacation this summer, hopefully? So the whole woke scare or the woke politics scare, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily broken through to a majority of Americans. Indeed, our poll finds that only about half of Americans consider themselves familiar with the term. Most, the equal numbers say that they're unfamiliar. They don't really know what it means. And then when we ask a little bit more detail, if they would consider it to be an insult or compliment, we see Americans are sort of roughly divided, about 40% saying they'd say it's an insult, 32% saying a compliment, about 20% saying they don't know what it means. And then when sort of given statements to sort of say, okay, well, what does it mean to you? The majority, 59%, say that it means to be informed, educated, or aware of social injustices, versus the sort of Republican framing to be overly politically correct and police others' words. So what we're seeing is that most Americans aren't really engaging, and in that sort of lack of knowledge, people can sort of put in whatever they want into that term. And indeed, you see people like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis putting very negative spin on the term woke, and people are responding to that. But just given sort of the word themselves to answer woke, we do see that most Americans actually defer to a more positive understanding of the word. And yes, just like you said, there's a big difference by age, with younger people much more positive about the term, much more familiar with the term than older Americans who are less aware, less familiar, and also more negative about it, I think, sort of based on that unfamiliarity, fear sort of connection.
And if Democrats are smart, they will understand that and recognize that they did incredibly well with young voters in 2022. Young voters are increasingly turned off by Republican attacks, the whole issue with culture. And so, frankly, if you're Democrats, they should be leaning into that and really targeting those voters, because if they get them to turn out, they can sweep elections. If they are so focused on trying to capture these older white voters, trying to reclaim Reagan Democrats, look, you're going to be caught in the culture wars, and you're playing right into the hands of Republicans. And so I think the focus for if you're progressives on those young numbers.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this poll illustrates, and a number of other polls that we've done on similar topics, is that it's actually a very small sliver of the population that cares strongly about these issues. The large majority of the population are relatively agnostic on the topic. And indeed, it is something like 10, 15% that is opposed to sort of the concept of woke, that sort of sees it very negatively, that feels that sentiment very strongly and is driving that. And then there's a larger group that's sort of just responding to the rhetoric, right? They're just, oh, well, that sounds bad, I don't like it, but they don't really know anything about it. And I think on the Democratic side, there's a sort of a smaller cohort of younger people who do care strongly about the issue, and then a larger cohort of Democrats who aren't really as clued in, because again, they're focusing on sort of those kitchen table issues, paying their bills, things like that. Because honestly, for most Americans are actually really practical in their day-to-day lives, and are not, getting all spin up about words and concepts. But the realities underneath those do matter, right? So we see, for instance, Americans aren't as concerned about woke politics, but they are concerned about police violence and injustice towards Black and Brown Americans. So there is a little bit of push-pull in sort of how people understand these things, and the words really do matter when it comes to how people will respond when presented with these concepts.
All right, Chris, if folks want to get more detail on this poll, where should they go?
You can find it on our website, IPSOS.com, or on USA Today's website, usatoday.com.
All right, Chris, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Folks, we come back. We're going to talk about Republican attacks on DEI on Capitol Hill, how they act as if discrimination doesn't exist. All of this stuff, folks, is all important, because who are they really targeting? You. They're targeting Black voters. We'll unpack that next right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And folks, we really need your economic support. We've got to raise, hit our monthly goals this month in order for us to continue doing what we're doing. We're in the fight for advertising dollars, but they're not supporting us the way they should. Your dollars are critical. And so what I'm going to do today, every person who gives to us via Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, I'm going to shout you out. A bunch of you have sent checks and money orders. I'm going to read some of those names as well. So anybody who gives during the show, I'm going to give you a live shout out. Check and money orders, go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zale, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, and of course, get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at all bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Target. You can also download a copy on Audible. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, we've seen the headline. Major tech companies laying off. Google, Facebook, Twitter, just to name a few, and tens of thousands have been laid off as a result. On the next Get Wealthy, we take a look at what it means to recession-proof your career in tech. Joining me will be Kanika Tover, and she's going to be sharing exactly what you need to do to turn anxiety into achievement.
Shifting our mindset to thinking that only opportunities exist in big tech is something that we're going to have to shift fast, because there's so many opportunities that are out there that we have to change the way we were thinking about our careers.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
A lot of these corporations or people that are running stuff push black people if they're doing a certain thing. What that does is it creates a butterfly effect of any young kid who, wants to leave any situation they're in, and the only people they see are people that are doing this. So I gotta be a gangster, I gotta shoot, I gotta sell, I gotta do this in order to do it. And it just becomes a cycle. But when someone comes around and is making we don't, they don't want to push it or put money into it. So that's definitely something I'm trying to fix too, is just show there's other avenues. You don't gotta be a rapper, you don't gotta be a ball player, you can be a country singer, you can be an opera singer, you can be a damn whatever, showing the different avenues. And that is possible, and it's hard for people to realize it's possible until someone does.
I'm Deion Cole, and you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Stay woke.
All right, folks, you want to understand the sheer stupidity of Republicans, listen to this video as a Georgia Republican, literally blames diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Ohio train derailment. Watch this.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to demand accountability. Pete Buttigieg has shown that he is unfit to lead the Department of Transportation and must resign immediately. From his first day in office, he has been more focused on diversity training and identity politics than on building and maintaining America's transportation system. He has abandoned his department's mission of improving safety, technology, and efficiency of our infrastructure in favor of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Case in point, the horrific train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Buttigieg took 10 days to acknowledge this incident and 3 weeks to show up and support the community. You know, as Ohioans fled their homes and worried about their health, the Secretary of Transportation was on TV whining about too many white people in construction industries. His policies have continuously put the wokes before the folks, and we are again seeing the consequences. After seeing another Norfolk Southern train derailed this weekend, I was reminded of the fact that the company wrote to shareholders stating that it is focused on DEI. This administration's focus on DEI is forcing private companies to rethink their goals, and one has to wonder, was Norfolk Southern's DEI policies are directing resources away from the important things like greasing wheel bearings? Y'all, this insanity must stop. Speaking of insanity, it looks like Secretary Pete Buttigieg is spending a lot of taxpayer money flying on private jets, but he doesn't want the American people to know where he's going or why. I don't know about you, but I seem to recall a recent Health and Human Services Secretary being forced to resign over the same exact thing. Anyway, why is the DOT refusing to tell the American people how much Secretary Buttigieg 23 flights on private jets has cost them? You know, maybe the secretary should just come to the Capitol Hill and answer these questions for himself. It'd be a cheap trip and it wouldn't require airfare. Either way, it's time for him to resign. That'll allow him time to promote wokeness and take private jets on his own dime and his own time.
Oh, lying Congressman Mark Collins standing there lying. Now, see, what he did not say during that whole BS floor speech is that it was a Trump administration that rolled back an Obama-era rules when it came to, the brakes on the trains. Oh, they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to tell you how this same company spent millions of dollars on a stock buyback, but not dealing with safety of their trains. That's why the CEO of the company was on Capitol Hill today apologizing for actually what happened. Now, this is not just there. On the Financial Services Committee, we played before Republicans complaining about, y'all keep bringing up discrimination. Remember we played the clip? I've never, all of this talk about discrimination in housing, and I haven't seen any of that stuff. Well, today, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, member of the committee, asked Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, about the very issue. Press play.
I believe wholeheartedly that we have a lot of work to do and this agency can help us, because we know that study after study will show us that there's discrimination in lending, that there's consumer abuse, that there is fraud. I even wrote an op-ed that was published in The Hill last month addressing these comments. Because I've had my colleagues tell me that they were tired of hearing about discrimination in lending, and we should move on. So that has bothered me from the time my colleagues said that until today. So Attorney General Ellison, as part of the CBCF's mandate, is to root out unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices. The agency last year authorized that this also extends to unfair discrimination as well. Can you address the allegations that discrimination does not exist in financial services, and tell us why you think it's critical that the agency should protect our consumers to combat these harmful practices?
Well, Congresswoman, it certainly does exist, and attorneys general around the country know it, and it is very pernicious in its effects. It involves student lending, it involves mortgage lending, auto lending, and the beat goes on. And what it does is undermine the opportunity for meaningful prosperity, the American dream for women and people of color in our country. And our economy would work better if people were able to receive fair treatment. And let me just tell you, it's not only is it going on now, it's been going on for quite a long time. I'll just say that, you know, for literally hundreds of years, we've seen this disparity, and I'm glad that you're committed to rooting it out.
Thank you. My time's up, and I yield back.
But they say none of these things are actually happening or exist. Well, then, of course, you have the dodo bird, Lauren Boebart, really upset because Congresswoman Cori Bush actually chose to highlight the white supremacist views of someone speaking on Capitol Hill who Republicans brought in as an expert. So watch this exchange. I'm not going to play all of it, but just watch this exchange.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. St. Louis and I are here today to have a serious discussion about what energy security looks like for people, not corporations. This hearing is not that discussion. If House Republicans actually cared about preventing an energy and economic crisis from happening, they would commit to investing in renewable energy. Unfortunately, there are no serious proposals being offered. Rising inflation caused by Russia's violent invasion of Ukraine and COVID-19 pandemic-related supply chain shortages, combined with dangerous corporate greed and a reliance on fossil fuels, has left the United States in a tenuous position of expensive, unreliable, and unsafe energy. Let's be clear, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was precisely created to be tapped in emergencies involving severe shortages of oil. Of course, I believe that the best way to avoid similar challenges in the future is to end our reliance on oil. But there should be no doubt that President Biden employed it explicitly for its stated purpose in an emergency when our nation's families and people needed it most. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, gas prices peaked at $4.88 in the Midwest region last year and are now down to $3.24 as of this week. People were struggling to get to doctor's appointments or to keep their heat on, and the Republican Party would have loved to do nothing. While the drawdown of the SPR was necessary to bolster supplies in an emergency, future events can be best ameliorated or prevented by reducing our demand for and our reliance on fossil fuels. But my Republican colleagues have unironically invited for-profit think tank and oil titans whose expertise is in maximizing profits, especially at the expense of our Black, our brown, and our indigenous neighbors' health, safety, and well-being. One of these so-called energy experts is a philosopher who has previously espoused white supremacist views. For instance, in his 2000 college newspaper, he wrote, quote, "The African and American Studies Department has 23 classes. In many of these classes, African culture is presented
Mr. Chairman,
not as
I demand
inferior."
the gentlelady's words be taken down. She just called the witness a white supremacist.
No, I referred to the words, not to the person, not to him. The words.
The gentlelady is referring to the witness's statement and referred to him as a white supremacist. I would like a parliamentary inquiry into having the woman's words taken down.
The chair recognizes Congresswoman Boebart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like a parliamentary inquiry into taking down the gentlelady's words, the ranking member's words, for insinuating that our witness made white supremacist statements using his words.
Okay. The chair cannot take down words that are directed toward a witness, only to other members. All right. The chair recognizes Ranking Member Bush to continue her opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
So I just want y'all to understand with that exchange. We're gonna talk about that with our panel. How all these things are related, because what you need to understand is exactly what the Republican Party is doing, which is the basis, folks, of my book. Their entire strategy hinges on angering white voters, getting them all fired up, instilling fear in them. Oh, the scary black people and the scary Latinos and the Asians, they're coming after us. And what we need to understand is not to get caught playing their game and being on defense, but going on offense. We'll explain that after we come back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, everybody. This is Jonathan Nelson.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, let's bring in our panel. Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Reese Colbert, founder of Black Women Views. Also, Erica Savage, founder of the Reframe Brain. So the thing here the reason I'm sort of methodically laying these things out, Reese, is because when, one, black folks who watch the show, or black people out here who are running their mouths, who listen to idiots who talk about not voting, need to understand that the strategy these people are trying to execute actually works. I've said how Moms for Liberty has taken over 10 of the 14 largest school boards in South Carolina. I've talked about how they're solidifying power in these various states where they control the legislature, supermajorities, control the state Supreme Court. And so they're using the racial buttons. Ron DeSantis' entire platform is on stoking white fear. And so when we check out, when we vote at 38, 40, 45, 50% of our numbers, we basically are giving them free reign to do whatever the hell they want to do. And now the Republicans are in control of the House. You see how they want to stop anything and everything dealing with race, dealing with addressing past wrongs, because they are deathly afraid of what is coming down. There's a train coming, and they see it coming. They're like, well, let's see if we can blow these tracks up before this train comes and runs us over.
Oh, yeah. Their entire strategy is to deflect and gaslight and cheat their way into staying in, maintaining, and stealing as much power as they can. And, you know, it's easy to kind of look at Florida and just think that that's kind of an aberration with what Ron DeSantis is doing down there, being an autocratic fascist dictator, essentially, who has completely rip to shreds the First Amendment. But the reality is that states like Florida and states like Texas and their educational standards actually have a national impact. We saw that with the AP African American History course, how they revised it based on Florida's and primarily Ron DeSantis objections to it. And we see that Congress has a very powerful oversight role. It has a very powerful appropriations role. And so when you have Republicans in charge of the committee, a person like Lauren Boebart, and there were 26 Republicans who refused to sign a letter denouncing white supremacy. Just like we saw after the Buffalo horrific shooting that happened, Republicans did not sign off on the resolution that Congressman Jamal Bowman put forth to denounce white replacement theory, great replacement theory. So this is their ball game. They don't have an economic policy that wins. They're not about lowering the cost of insulin, prescription drugs, shoring up healthcare, education, anything like that. All they have is the culture wars. And unfortunately for the rest of us, it's been effective enough for them to take back one chamber of Congress.
The thing, Erica, is that the battle is not in D.C. They understand if they control Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Ohio. The bottom line is they can run the table because the power, they understand the power's in those states. And so that's why, if you're progressives, you better be thinking, how do you capture that Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin where the court then flips 4-3? Right now, Democrats have a 4-3 majority in North Carolina Supreme Court. How do you protect that and expand it? Because had Sherry Beasley won, they could have had a 2020. They could have had a 6-1 majority. She loses by 400 votes. Now it's only a 4-3 majority. They lose one of those seats. Republicans are now back in control of the Supreme Court. This is where folks have to be playing chess and understanding the long-term implications, and all of these attacks on woke, DEI, and the constant media narrative in the New York Post, in the Wall Street Journal, in conservative media, in Fox News, all different places. It is to specifically drive white turnout higher. And if we're seeing white turnout go up and we're seeing black turnout fall even by 2-3 points, they win.
Yeah, and they're winning. I think one of the things that, we've been doing on this show for the past 5 years is really elevating the message of why it is so important for people to be engaged, not just on election day, but every day throughout the year, because what we see, the proliferation of these conversations that do make it into mainstream media, and then they have people that come on and they talk about these stories and just kind of make them go longer than they really should. It really is to, as you said, to your point, it's really to infiltrate the ether around, you need to be scared of diversity. Oh my gosh, what does wokeness mean? All of these trigger words that really do cause people to who are non-Black to feel like, well, we have got to protect our standing in this country. But time and again, we're proving that actually better together. So all of that to say, looking at, as we get ready to head into another presidential election, we get ready to head into another election of Congress here in 2024, and we've seen people that have already started dancing around or announcing their desire to run for president, that we don't need get out the vote efforts to start in late 24 or early 24. We need those efforts to start out now, because the depressing of the Black and those people who are non-white vote is constantly happening. It's happening through memes. It's happening through short takes. And people don't have the time. People are raising their families. People are not watching the news the way they used to. People have cut the cable cord in essence. So there is this, except for those of us that are engaged in politics, people are divorced really from the things that are happening. Like, I'm willing to bet not many people did see that clip of Cori Bush, that exchange between her and Lauren Boebart, except for it being played here on Roland Martin and of course on other networks to really kind of bolster this message of, oh, look what's happening, something like a reality show type of snippet. But what is actually happening is there are constant attacks on democracy. And what we have, which is so precious, something that is being picked on through voter suppression efforts that come through legislation, that come through closing of voter polls, whether those be on college campuses or in areas where we know that large swaths of Black and people of color go to vote, shutting down of souls to the poll, things like that continue to happen. That what's essentially the messaging is that you don't need to vote, your vote's not important, or you need to continue to strive to vote. If we commit ourselves to being actually engaged in what is left, as I've said, the dwindling days of democracy, there's no way in hell that we could actually not be at the polls when it's time to show up and be spreading the message and talking to people that trust us, that trust our voice, to engage those people, to tell them why it is important for them to engage in the vote. Because this is effectively what we're seeing is people that are being adamant. They are making it their job to ensure that white nationalism is the land of the law in America for good.
There's a reason, again, why you stack all of these things back to back to back, Greg, because people need to understand what the pattern is. When you start trying to complain about DEI over a train derailment, that's when you know you have hit peak derangement syndrome, but it is effective in pushing their white voters closer to the polls.
Absolutely, because it's not about information. It's about white nationalism. It's about fear, as you've written. When your first guest, Chris Jackson from IPSOS, I mean, as you said, it's not that people don't understand the meaning of woke. It's that they have a political difference when it comes to interpreting what to do about it. As W.E.B. Du Bois said in Atlanta University after the 1906 Atlanta White Riot, he said, I thought the world was thinking wrong about race. Then I saw the black man's knuckles in the window of a butcher shop where they had lynched him, and I realized this wasn't about facts. This wasn't about truth. This is about raw power. Mike Collins, a white nationalist from the 10th Congressional District in Georgia, Mike Collins, who put $500,000 of his own money in the race that he won over Tabitha Johnson Green, a black woman registered nurse in that district. By the way, there are 570,000 or so people registered to vote in the 10th Congressional District in Georgia, and he beat Tabitha Johnson Green by 90,000 votes, but he beat her like 198,000 to 109,000, meaning what? Most people didn't vote. Again, underscoring what you said. If we come out to vote, Tabitha Johnson Green would be there instead of a man with a trucking company. The Department of Transportation found 30% of his trucks didn't function. So he's bought and paid for a shill for the corporates. He never talks about corporate greed. He never talks about deregulation, as you said, and he's there spewing his ignorance for that reason. This isn't about, this is not whether you understand that. It's about white nationalism. Bobo, of course, who won her election in the Colorado 3rd by 550 votes out of 160, almost 169,000 cast. If a few more people had gone and voted, we wouldn't be seeing Bobo. Bobo was talking to, of course, Congresswoman Bush, and she was trying to support Alex Epstein, who was a white civilizationist. Epstein's remarks that Congresswoman Bush was talking about basically say that Western civilization is superior to African civilization and all other civilizations. And of course, he's right. He's right if you're a white nationalist. And so when Bobo, who can't spell the word civilization, probably can't spell Alex or Epstein, and might have a problem with her own last name, if it weren't tattooed somewhere, probably on the small of her back, is not trying to demonstrate intelligence. She's trying to demonstrate raw power, finally underscoring the point that you're raising, Roland. This is about raw, naked power, and it requires a response that is grounded in raw, naked power. Organizing, voting, demonstrating, protesting, supporting our institutions, and overwhelming these people, because you're not going to win an argument based on the facts. You're going to win an argument based on power.
Folks, we're going to go to a break. We're going to finish this topic when we come back. And again, why am I laying these pieces down as if we're laying bricks on a road? Because trust me, everything that you're hearing us talk about, you're going to see in 2024. Everything. You're going to see these attacks in ads. You're going to see these attacks on social media. And it's going to be in every single issue. It's going to be in the issue of crime. It's going to be in the issue of resources. You heard Collins there talk about Buttigieg on television complaining about whites in construction jobs because they do not want to see us advance, because they believe every job is their job. They believe that this country is their country. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Black Table with me, Greg Carr. We featured the brand new work of Professor Angie Porter, which, simply put, is a revolutionary reframing of the African experience in this country. It's the one legal article everyone, and I mean everyone, should read. Professor Porter and Dr. Valencia Watkins, our legal roundtable team, join us to explore the paper that I guarantee is going to prompt a major aha moment in our culture.
You crystallize it by saying, who are we to other people? Who are African people to others? Governance is our thing. Who are we to each other? The structures we create for ourselves, how we order the universe as African people.
That's next on The Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
On the next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, just who do you think you are? And maybe more importantly, who is it that you think you're trying to please? The answer to that second question is really wrapped up in the first. Think about that, being the true, authentic you, no matter the circumstance.
But we learn the art of forgiveness, not only of forgiving one another, but forgiving ourselves. And we also learn how to love ourselves so that we can love each other.
That's next on A Balanced Life, here on Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Yo, what's up? This your boy Ice Cube.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So you might recall when we talked about Christopher Rufo and targeting of critical race theory. And remember, part of the thing that took place was the reaction from so many people was, oh, no, CRT is not being taught in schools. The moment progressives begin to engage them, you start playing defense and not offense. And so one of the mistakes that I believe that we continue to see, you don't see folks willing to challenge them based upon the data. I told you when I did Patrick Bet-David's podcast, he said I was playing the victim, talking about the issues of discrimination in home appraisals. Yet, when I then pulled the New York Times story, because his researchers somehow couldn't find it, that showed that they examined 47 million different appraisals, he goes, oh, well, I don't believe it. See, so what they do is they want to immediately discount any of the information because they don't believe systemic racism exists. They believe, oh, it's just sort of one-offs and how these things happen. But we all know that's simply not the case. But what I need people to understand is that their actions are very effective. You remember last year, you had actually go back to, last year. You had all of these school boards, 2021 as well, where you had hundreds of white folks showing up at Lowndes County School Board in Virginia, other places saying, CRT is being taught. Superintendent, no, it's not. No, it's not. People are like, yes, it is. But guess what happened when Youngkin was elected governor of Virginia? It wasn't that Terry McAuliffe did not turn folks out, even though he was an awful candidate. He really was. The difference is that the white turnout increased. It increased. That's how Youngkin was able to win. So what's happening this year? Well, this year in Virginia, this year, not 24, everybody listen to what I'm saying. This year, all offices in Virginia, statewide offices in the House and the Senate, are up for election. Listen to what I'm telling you. See, we spend so much time focusing on, is Biden going to drop Harris? Biden's too old. Why is he running? Y'all, that's 2024. Right now, in 2023, there are school board elections, city council elections, state Supreme Court elections, state rep, state Senate, county elections. You've got a runoff for mayor in Chicago in a few weeks. Will it be Brandon? Will it be Paul? You've got all sorts of races going on. And yet we are sitting here so focused on 2024, yet we are ignoring what is sitting right in front of us. Because when you control the school board, you control the curriculum, who gets hired as teachers, bonds, bond election. You control all of that. You control who is superintendent. And so what I need our folks to understand is that they are executing an agenda methodically, and they are organized, they are mobilized, and it's being funded. As far as I'm concerned, on the left, Democrats and progressives, and yes, black folks, are our black organizations as organized and mobilized? Are we understanding the funding battle as well? Or are we spending so much time talking about BS on social media and not understanding that our future well-being is literally predicated on who is sitting in public policy? And I'll make this last point before I go back to my panel. Play the mic, and I want y'all to listen to it. Play the Mike Collins clip again, because I need you to understand what he's really trying to say in this clip. Play it, and we'll break it down.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to demand accountability. Pete Buttigieg has shown that he is unfit to lead the Department of Transportation and must resign immediately. From his first day in office, he has been more focused on diversity training and identity politics than on building and maintaining America's transportation system. He has abandoned his department's mission of improving safety, technology, and efficiency of our infrastructure in favor of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Case in point, the horrific train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Buttigieg took 10 days to acknowledge this incident and 3 weeks to show up and support the community. You know, as Ohioans fled their homes and worried about their health, the Secretary of Transportation was on TV whining about too many white people in construction industries. His policies have continuously put the wokes before the folks, and we are again seeing the consequences. After seeing another Norfolk Southern train derailed this weekend, I was reminded of the fact that the company wrote to shareholders stating that it is focused on DEI. This administration's focus on DEI.
Stop. They've already said the next battle, they want to go after DEI in corporate America. They're doing it in education. That's what's next. That, Reese, is what I'm trying to get people to understand. They do not want to see an increase in contracts. They do not want to see focuses on who's being hired. So they're attacking it in education. They're using their power in the state legislature by controlling the state schools. The next focus for them is going to be in corporate America.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen it already under the Trump administration, and again with Ron DeSantis is doing and we saw it also in Georgia with Brian Kemp, where we see these government officials pushing back on corporations that try to have a corporate responsibility, social responsibility aspect to their portfolio. And so the problem is not that just that, these white supremacists, white nationalists don't want Black people to be equal or equitable. They want us to have absolutely nothing. That's really the problem. And so this is about stripping away our citizenship when it comes to women, our autonomy, our bodily autonomy, a number of things. And so people should absolutely take these very chilling warnings seriously. But unfortunately, much of the country is asleep at the wheel.
Erica and Greg, I want people to go to ProPublica. They have a story about Leonard Leo. He, of course, was the architect behind the Federalist Society, getting Republicans to have a 6-3 majority of the Supreme Court. Remember, that was a conservative billionaire who essentially gave $1.3 billion of his fortune to Leo to spend however he wants to. And here's what they're doing. ProPublica has his story on inside the private and confidential conservative group that promises to crush liberal dominance. So what they're trying to do is what they've done with the Federalist Society, Erica, they now want to infiltrate every other aspect, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, media, tech, to drive these young conservatives, young hardcore conservatives to be in these institutions as well. That is the plan, their plan of action.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking about the Heritage Foundation that if anybody is in Congress and they're a Republican, they keep a scorecard on you. These institutions, so to speak, definitely heavily influence and guide those people that serve people, but have to serve per their guidelines. When you listen to Mike Collins, and I thought about this last time when he said woke versus folk, when you hear people talk about liberal, it's really a way to really talk negatively, disparagingly about Black people. And as Reese said, even though we are in the time of much social media, there seems to be so many things that are going on that are modernized. There is a school of thought that has not ever left this country. And Ralph Ellison famously said it, there are few things in the world as dangerous as sleepwalkers. Just because we are in the year 2023 does not mean that the holding thought of Black people, of people of color, and women being property, being property, and also being ways in which to build upon, to move up another group, that thought has not left. And so all of these challenges that we're seeing wrapped up in language made to be more suave, sort of a sense. They're finessing it maybe differently, but it's the same game.
I got to go to a break. Greg, I'm going to get your comment on the flip side. We're also going to talk about, with Erica Alexander, about, again, the fight for reparations as well. I'm trying to tell you, folks, if you think these folks are playing, they're not. They are well-funded, and they're focused to attack everything that deals with our advancement. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037- 0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hey everybody, it's your man Fred Hammond.
I'm Deion Cole, you're watching
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Stay woke.
The Teneo Network, that's what this thing is called, that they are funding. And again, it's the networks of conservatives that can roll back liberal influence. Go to my iPad, please. In Wall Street and Silicon Valley among authors and academics, with pro athletes and Hollywood producers. It is a fairless society for everything. That's their goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Leonard Leo is the very well-known Comanche. The New York Times did an article back in October, I think it's the 12th of October, where they trace his influence, Vice President of the Federal Society, directly responsible. You go back to Jeff Toobin talking about Leo back as early as 2017. This activist who is, Toobin says, is responsible for, at that time, a third of the Supreme Court. Justice McDonald Gorsuch, because Leo and Mitch McConnell are very close. Also, Clarence Thomas, of course, whose wife, the insurrectionist, still runs around unimpeded. And John Roberts, you see the hand of Leonard Leo. Now, Leo's not a rah-rah kind of Trumpist. He's closer to McConnell because he knows he doesn't need to be very, very loud. In fact, I said John Roberts, I meant Sam Alito, the chef's kiss of white nationalism on the Supreme Court. In fact, Leo's name was attached to the dinner parties that Alito has hosted, and the accusations by some folk in the federal legislature, Democrats in particular, that these dinner parties may have been where the Hobby Lobby and Mississippi abortion case brief drafts were leaked. Leo has his fingers in all of this. And you're absolutely right, Roland. They're trying to overwhelm folk with money. The Corn Pone congressman from the Georgia 10th, Mike Collins, mentioned accountability. Well, this is one of your favorite subjects, Roland, and I know it's so funny, and I thought about it. Here's the number, 920. But let's add several zeros after that 920. $920,000. That's the PPP loan that Mike Collins, he of the jacked up trucking company where 30% of his trucks don't work. That's the amount that Mike Collins, Mr. Accountability, Mr. Eastbound and Down, rolling on and trucking out of the 10th Congressional District in Georgia. That's the amount that Mike Collins had in a PPP loan, which is your money and my money and our tax money, which was forgiven. So when they start talking about accountability, as Erica said, this is about crushing the spine of the public and stealing with both fists. And finally, to the point that you raised, Roland, and tonight, and are raising over and over again, when you start talking about theft at that level, we've gone past the question of truth, and we're dealing with raw power. They are financing a full spectrum war, and they have to because they realize that they're not having the babies, the demographics are changing, they're ginning up white fear, and they are making a last stand. And I say we roll over them like the ocean, because you can't negotiate with people like that. You got to roll over them and impose your will if you want the society to be different than the one they are dreaming in their fever dreams for you and for me and for all of us.
So obviously, you already see, folks, you already see them attacking the Reparations Commission in California, and also, of course, the discussion happening there in San Francisco. There's a new documentary on PBS that deals with this. It's called The Big Payback. Here is the trailer.
It should be cash payment.
I think what they're offering us is an insult.
How do you determine who's supposed to get it?
Yeah, I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago is a good idea.
HR 40 is we're pushing very hard. There's been a lot of debate and discussion about the bill.
This is a proposal for reparations for the institution of slavery.
Yes.
The institution of slavery has never gone away.
Convict leasing,
The oppression of voting.
poll taxes, and racist GI bills.
HR 40 is, in fact, the response of the United States of America long overdue.
I get this call from a dear friend. He said, man, you know, we got a bad sister in Evanston, and she's pushing the reparations question strong.
Redress for the Black community, for the nation.
And so it was Alderman Simmons. You have become the visible face and the driving force of the Evanston Reparation Initiative.
Some mornings I wake up and I feel like, wow, I'm a part of history. This is special. And then it's intimidating at the same time, because what if you don't get it right?
The greatest hurdle is the political will to make it happen. And Alderman Simmons made it happen, gathering a lot of evidence, specifically implicating actions of the city.
This program, as it is incomplete.
I don't know why they would be given more status than any other group of people.
People have been extremely nasty to me.
You don't give them money and then tell them what they can do with it.
You cannot pay my grandfather back. He's dead. Give us what we're due.
I don't think it's going to go too far or anywhere.
I'm still not prepared to join an insurrection. I just want you to understand who we are.
We in Evanston are leading the way to heal a nation.
We don't want a piece of freedom. We want the whole package, and that's reparations.
The co-directors of the documentary, Erica Alexander and Whitney Dow, they have been holding conversations, or plan to, at HBCUs across the country. These student-led conversations. One has already been held at Bennett. Glad to have both of you here. Erica, how do you think these discussions will actually change this conversation to move the ball forward?
Well, thank you first, Roland, for being having us on, because you're in the movie and you help us make it and your power and credibility. I think that it'll help move it because, well, it's time. There's a lot of people talking about reparations. There are a lot of cities independently, locally doing initiatives around it. Obviously, our film focuses on Robert Louis Simmons, who passed the first reparations tax fund for Black residents in her city. But also, even before that, there's a whole movement that has been stymied and has had obstacles, certainly HR 40 in committee with Sheila Jackson Lee. But we're just trying to add, I guess, a conversational tool and debate to it so we can look at it with more information, because a lot of people talk about reparations but don't know anything about it.
You know, Whitney, the thing that I've had these debates on the show numerous times, and at the outset of the show, I was talking about why, when you talk about public policy and why voting, those things are connected. And there are a number of people who say, cut the check or I won't vote. And I keep saying, but who do you think is going to cut the check? It's the policymakers. So it's sort of irrational to act as if you don't change the policymakers, then you're not going to get a change in policy. How do you deal with that again, where where folks are saying, well, if one doesn't happen, I won't do the other. But if you don't do the other, then what you want ain't gonna happen.
Well, you know, Robin Ruth Simmons, the subject of our film, is the object lesson. She was voted in by her constituency in the 5th Ward of Evanston, Illinois, and she cut the check. Without her, without a woman who represented the community of Evanston, the Black community of Evanston, there would not be a reparations program in Evanston, Illinois. So she's a perfect example of that.
And on that point, Erica, and again, so you're having these student-led conversations. When you look at voting numbers, those who vote the most are 65 plus, then 55, then 45 to 55. When you get to 18-29, those numbers are a lot lower. So when you're having this, so how is that conversation going how did they go at Bennett with these students when this comes up to say, okay, you want reparations, but you got to be voting your numbers, and you got the numbers if you use them?
Yeah, that's a powerful thing. I don't know if young people know really how much power they have. They would use it. Certainly, I believe that we were success at Bennett. Bennett is a small college. It's called a micro college, and because of their president, who really put everything into this, we had a really great conversation, and the debate there that they put on was theatrical. And Suzanne Walsh will always be grateful to her for that introduction. But again, we're doing a lot of education, because what you're talking about in voting, voting your numbers, knowing your power, that would be great. But if they knew that behind that, they could actually initiate change, and not just a personal admission or apology for payment or monetary proof, but also convincingly change their lives and the lives of their children, which they can't imagine right now because they're in school. So I don't know. I mean, right now, we're just trying to get people to have a conversation about stuff that they really know very little about. And when you're addressing reparations at all, it's a huge history lesson. Pain and suffering, but a lot of resilience.
Also, I think, Whitney, when you're having the conversation, to Erica's point, there's so many people who have it from the vantage point of slavery without also understanding that, well, if you advance it forward, there are a significant number of African Americans who are alive today who had to live through Jim Crow, who had to live through redlining. And so, to me, you also have to have a nuanced approach to understanding, because there really is no one size fits all, because where you're having this conversation take place, I mean, you got some people who it's like, HR 40 sucks. Then I go, okay, so what's your alternative? And so and again, they sort of get mad at me, and I said, guys, this is real simple. I've covered politics a long time. I said, the number in the House is 218. If you don't get the 218, you ain't having a conversation. Number in the Senate is 60. Then you got to get it past the president. I'm like, guys, it comes down to federal level. It comes down to, can you count? It's counting. Can you get votes? I'm like, rhetoric is one thing, but when you have folks who are attacking Chief Jackson Lee by saying, oh, the bill sucks, it don't go far enough, I'm going, okay, please tell me how you're going to advance your bill to get 218 votes. I'll wait.
That was one of the interesting things about making this film, as like a white American who believes like strongly in reparations. I thought that my job is to bring white people into this conversation, make white people see how they're connected to this, make white people see that if they support reparations, this is not something that takes from you, will actually make your community stronger and thus benefit you if you want to just be purely selfish. What was so surprising to me is the deep divisions and complications in the Black community thinking about reparations, just like what you're describing. And I don't really there's sort of this big divide between sort of the ADOS movement and the Freedmen movement, who say that reparations should just be for the descendant of enslaved Americans. There's people who look at it at different ways and say it should be more Pan-African. And I always say why do you have to debate this? Why can't you let a million flowers bloom? And that what if every community, just like I think about it in terms like marriage equality, that every community figured it out for themselves and saw that it was important for their community to have sort of equality of marriage, that if you take that same approach to reparations and kind of socialize the idea within these communities, that's how you're going to get to the national level. Rather than fighting all these micro battles, let's talk about the big goal and everybody push towards the big goal.
Gonna go to break. Greg Carr cannot wait to get in on this. I see you, Greg, shaking your head there. He is being engaged in a lot of these battles and discussions, and we'll pick it up on the other side, folks. Don't forget, if you're watching YouTube, hit the like button. We should easily get more than 1,000 likes on Facebook. Hit the share button. Watching the app as well. And don't forget, download the app, of course, right there, folks. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also now watch our 24-hour day, 7-day week streaming channel on Amazon News. Simply go to Amazon Fire TV, then click Amazon News to check us out. Support us in what we do as well. Your dollars make it possible. Trust me, folks, we're not getting the advertising support that we need. Your financial support is crucial for us to do what we do. May sound like I'm on PBS, but guess what? If we don't fund it, it ain't gonna happen. And that's how we able to have this show and 5 other shows on the Black Star Network, including the Black Table. Folks, send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. And Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinFilter.com. And of course, you buy White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. That money goes right back into the show. Get it at bookstores available everywhere, including Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Amazon, and of course, download your copy on Audible. I'll be right back.
A lot of these corporations or people that are running stuff push black people if they're doing a certain thing. What that does is it creates a butterfly effect of any young kid who, you know, wants to leave any situation they're in, and the only people they see are people that are doing this. So I gotta be a gangster, I gotta shoot, I gotta sell, I gotta do this in order to do it. And it just becomes a cycle. But when someone comes around and is making other, we don't, you know, they don't want to push it or put money into it. So that's definitely something I'm trying to fix too, is just show there's other avenues. You don't gotta be a rapper, you don't gotta be a ball player, you can be a country singer, you can be an opera singer, you can be a damn whatever, you know? Showing the different avenues, and that is possible, and it's hard for people to realize it's possible until someone does it.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Godfrey, the funniest dude on the planet. And you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ow.
The PBS doc is called The Big Payback. Whitney Dow, Erica Alexander, they're the co-directors. Greg Carr, I saw you shaking your head over there. I know you could not wait to get in on this conversation. Go right ahead.
No, brother. I'm just shaking my head because I agree with you, Sister Alexander. It's really about conversation. We have to have a conversation. I mean, as a commissioner, as a member of the board of the National Coalition for Reparations in America, and COBRA, and longtime fighter in the reparations struggle. And I know you know just about everybody. I know y'all were out there in Illinois with my friends in Keisha Taifa and Ron Daniels and others. You know, I think the conversation is necessary because the first harm that African people have suffered is not, in addition to the physical harm, is the mental and cultural harm. So, Whitney, when you were talking about the reason you can't understand, I think, is probably because we have to understand that we have been culturally harmed and assault, and that's not going to be reparations will not come in the form of some form of compensation, material, institutional. That's going to come in the form of a cultural regrounding, self-repair. And the demand for reparations is the first step toward that. And I'll end with this just very quickly. I can't wait to see the big payback. I've heard a lot about it. I testified before the California Reparations Commission as it was last summer. Followed Dean Aaron Chemerinsky, the dean of Cal Berkeley. And I'm very clear that the legal strategy of lineage over race is, of course, as you know, because the state of California has banned race for use in any public policy considerations. It is unnecessarily divisive, and Chemerinsky told them that, and I told him that. Using lineage as a proxy for race is how the legal challenge to whatever reparations may come out in California will probably succeed, because we know that it's just a proxy for race. But what it does, the deeper damage it does, is that it separates African people. I'm with you. 1,000 flowers should bloom. There's 12 gates to the city, as they say in the Bible. But at the local level, sure, let Ryan and them do what they're doing in Evanston. At the state level, whether it's California or other reparations efforts, other states. At the federal level, as Sandy Derry and them say, let's talk about a federal level approach. But the international level is what allows those local and federal and state levels anywhere to succeed. This is where the work of people like Hillary McBeckles and the coalition that is put together in the Caribbean. The CARICOM Reparations Commission is so important. When you cut yourself off from our common humanity, that's where you get in trouble. And this American descendants of slavery, I am not a descendant of slaves. I'm an African person who is descended for those who were enslaved in the United States. And when we turn this black nativism inward, that's when all of the efforts fail, because ultimately that is coming from a miseducation, and that is a cultural issue. And that cultural issue, that's where reparations starts. The first step in reparations is self-repair. So, Sister Alexander, get those young people talking with each other, and we'll finally get to the point where we can deal with this question of self-repair, which is the first step toward any form of making a demand. There has to be a we to make a demand.
Erica?
Absolutely. I want to say,
hold on. Sorry, hold up. Other Erica. Erica Alexander, before I go to Erica Savage. Erica Alexander, go ahead.
Okay, Queen Bee, Erica, 1 second, I promise you. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Obviously, I had to come up of a lot of ignorance. I thought it was just, again, an apology or an admission, and then give me a check. But then I found out that it was a systemic issue, and that there were things to talk about, and there was the psychological damage, and also the ongoing matter of terrorism and all these things, and how we should talk about it, who should get it, and in what form. That's going to be, the devil will be in the details. But I do know this: if Reverend Barber is right that this is the third Reconstruction, then we have an opportunity to be the architects of the third Reconstruction and really dig in and finally get down to the nitty gritty and at least start. Do something, sign an executive order so the study can move forward, and make sure that these young people and everyone, white, everybody can have as much knowledge and find out what makes America what it is, and really start to get restitution to the people who.
I got at a trip, Erica Savage had a brother who hit me. He was like, man, you should be using your show every day advancing reparations. And I went to his Twitter feed. I'm like, you ain't got shit on your Twitter feed. I'm like, so how you gonna tell somebody to do something and you ain't doing a damn thing? He never tweeted back.
Oh, goodness, a good old ghost account. So I wanted to say congratulations to Erica and to Whitney. It's always good to see the Maverick is still about her business. My question for you, my question for the both of you is that you have an upcoming tour at North Carolina A&T March 21st. I would highly encourage parents, students, guardians, people that have students that are Aggies to please attend that at Harrison Auditorium. But you mentioned Bennett College. I believe that was your first stop. What has been the response of the students that you all have seen on your tour thus far? Has it been questions, listening, maybe not knowing what reparations is? What does that look like?
When you want to answer first?
Yeah, I mean, what's been interesting is that it's just what you said. There's like any sort of subject, you think you know it till you dig into it. And I think that was really interesting for the Bennett students is to realize how complex the reparations history is in America and how complex the discussion is. Because just as you were saying earlier, this idea of that I kind of take this position where what Robin did is she didn't parse the details of the reparations program. She said, let's all agree that it needs to be done. And I really feel like that's sort of like that's like the real starting point, that white Americans need to agree that this is something that needs to happen. We need to like agree to earmark the money. And if we spend the time hashing out all the little fights, we're not going to get there. And so that was sort of the beauty of Evanston. They agreed to be done, then they worked out the details of it. But I think that for the students, one of the things that we've seen is that they're really interested in digging into, especially because we're going to HBCUs, the different manifestations of it and understand different channels of how you can run it down, because it is such a complex process. I'm always like, it's so, in some ways, it's like, you're like, as a white person, you're like, God, my job is so simple. I just have to convince other white people to get on board this train, where I don't have standing to tell Black Americans what it should look like. I just need to support the effort to make it happen.
Also notes, Erica, that the students are excited. They are. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead, Erica. Go ahead.
We've got Ben & Jerry's, which is one of the few companies that actually comes out forcefully for reparations. It is a celebration. They're really excited, and they're approaching it as an opportunity to make history and be the generation that takes this on. So we are very gratified, especially Bennett. They put it out. They put out the dog. It was fantastic.
Reese.
Yeah, Dr. Carr mentioned the culture and the repair that has to happen around that. I'm wondering if you all examine at all the nature or the role of disinformation. And as Roland mentioned earlier, no reparations, no vote, things like that, and how that has impacted the attitudes. If you take, for instance, I looked at the California reparations bill, and the language to that is nearly identical to the language in HR 40, the federal legislation. But some of the social, or I should say a lot of the social media discussion around HR 40 was to talk about how that wasn't adequate while simultaneously supporting the California bill. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing culturally is being manufactured, and it's being manipulated by some of these disinformation campaigns. So I'm just wondering if you saw that at all raise its head during the making of this documentary.
Absolutely. And I think this is like the biggest issue that we're facing in this country now, is this disinformation. And especially when we're looking at like the attacks on critical race theory, American history is disinformation. And the actual teaching of real American history is disinformation. So how can we possibly imagine that with the foundation of misinformation we have about who we are as a people, are we ever going to be able to have functional dialogues with each other about where we should be moving to? But I think especially what was so clear is that the people who were against it were constantly taking straw men that had nothing to do with the debate, that would take the focus off of moving the work forward.
So you're going to be on various campuses. Let's see here, March 16th, Shaw University, North Carolina Central University. Let's see here, March 20th. Pull the schedule up there, folks. You're going to be on the campus of Johnson C. Smith University and Livingstone College on March 20th. St. Augustine's University, North Carolina A&T on March 21st. Fayetteville State University, Winston-Salem State University on March 22nd. And Elizabeth City State University on March 23rd. When does is the documentary already airing, or is it an air date?
It's already airing. It's on PBS. It's already aired. It came out, debuted on Martin Luther King Day. We won't be going to Elizabeth City. We'll try to do that by Zoom, but everything else you have is totally correct. That's changed recently.
All right.
Roland, people can watch the documentary now. If they go to the Big Payback Movie website or First Repair website, there's a button. You can watch it for free on the PBS app, on the PBS website. So there's a link that will just take you right, and you can just stream it right off your computer or to your television. So it had a national broadcast on Martin Luther King Day, January 16th, but now it's available for free through PBS, I think for the next few months, and then it was going to go on to Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Roku, all the other things. So, and we're also, in addition to this, we're putting together a national tour of the film to every community that is exploring local reparations right now.
Okay, Whitney Dow, Erica Alexander. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you for providing your wonderful voice for the film. Those who I want people, when they watch the film, they can hear you. So thank you.
Well, I don't think anybody's ever had a problem hearing me. So, I do not speak with a quiet voice. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a bunch. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We'll be back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, folks, Cash App or see your checking money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037. That's 0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan.
Hey, I'm Amber Stevens-West.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Micah Verser is missing from Mablevale, Arkansas. The 15-year-old who disappeared on February 10th is 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 120 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Micah Verser should call the Little Rock, Arkansas Police Department at 501-371-4829, 501-371-4829. The bodies of 2 Americans who were kidnapped and murdered in Mexico by a drug cartel on their way to the U.S. for further autopsies. The remains of Shaid Woodard and Zendale Brown will be transported to a Brownsville, Texas funeral home. The bodies were discovered alongside their 2 surviving friends in a house around the Mexican city of Matamoros. Woodard, Brown, Latavia Washington McGee, and Eric Williams drove into Matamoros on Friday so that Washington McGee, who was unarmed, could undergo a medical procedure, a tummy tuck. The trip turned violent when unidentified shooters fired on their van, loaded them into a vehicle, and drove them away. An innocent Mexican bystander, Woodard and Brown, were also killed. William was shot 3 times in the legs during the exchange. Now, this, folks, is right here. This is what happened last night. Go to my iPad, please. 5 men were found on a street in Mexico with this note attached to the window. And this was the Mexican drug cartel apologizing for the deaths, saying they do not kill innocent individuals, and literally turn these 5 individuals who are all bound over to police. Erica, I've never seen anything like this. Something tells me this drug cartel does not want massive American heat and Mexican heat coming down on them for these deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. This goes against, what I feel like many of us have been made aware of with regards to cartels, how ruthless they are. So I found it to be actually stunning that there was a note that was written, there was apology that was offered, first for the killing of one of the natives of the country, and then to the Americans that were killed. But I don't know, I'm startled because, I'm just thinking, like, I was just in Mexico a few months ago. So, against kind of some of the things that we think about, and having not, as Dr. Nola Haynes has shared with us across social media, did not look at a travel advisory as I would have years prior when I was traveling heavily internationally. It really did give me pause with regards to any further travel to Mexico. So I would, not on behalf of, but just really lift what Dr. Nola Haynes has offered us by way of social media, in that if any of us are going to be doing any travel specifically out of the country, to please look at the State Department's travel advisories, just so we could have an awareness of what's happening. But definitely, these 4 people that were traveling together should not have sustained the trauma and the death that they did sustain. Particularly, it seems like this event happened in broad daylight, and that also led me to think about, what did people think was happening when they saw people effectively being kidnapped and traumatized in broad daylight?
If you're in Mexico, you do not pay attention. You keep it moving. Reese, what's interesting is that there was supposed to be 5 people. One of them got held up because of paperwork. I'm sure they're thankful for that.
Right. I mean, as Erica just stated, there are travel advisories out there, and this is not to victim shame or anything like that, but we do have to be mindful of the regions. Even within countries, there are varying degrees of safety hazards. Some areas in Mexico have a crime and kidnapping advisory as opposed to just crime. So, but I do think that the whole focus, and you haven't made this focus, but others have, on the issue of one of the young ladies going there for a tummy tuck. That's irrelevant. A tummy tuck is not a death sentence. And, it just is, to me, I think that veers it into a sleazy way of victim shaming. The reality is this was a brutal, ruthless killing from the cartel. And this whole turning over of these alleged assailants, is nothing more than a strategy to avoid severe military intervention. That's what they're trying to do. So this is about self-preservation, not about a moral code of ethics.
Folks, let's talk about Memphis. More than a dozen Memphis Fire and Police Department employees have been charged or fired nearly 2 months after the fatal beating of Tyree Nichols. The Memphis Police and Fire Department have conducted administrative investigations to determine whether employees violated department policies. Additional footage of the horrific January 7th beating, still yet to be released to the public, has resulted in some actions against several police employees. 7 were fired, 3 were suspended, and 1 retired before a hearing could be conducted. Directly following the death of Nichols, 5 police officers were fired and criminally charged, and 2 were relieved of duty. 4 Memphis Fire Department personnel have also been charged as well. That goes to tell you right there, Greg, again, how expansive this is, where it wasn't just those officers involved. It was a wide and deep in the Memphis PD and Fire Department.
Absolutely, Roland. I mean, the 2 stories that you just covered, including this one in Memphis, Tennessee, and the one previously from the state of Tamaulipas, which has a border that abuts Texas, the United States, are not unrelated. What is the relationship of government to the people who live in a state. And by a state, I mean an organized community that has rules and the rule of law. Certainly in Mexico, a place with over 130 million people, that it has very diverse regions, where there have been breakdowns in government and where there's been almost a truce for decades between the drug cartels and parts of the federal and state governments in Mexico. You see a situation where the state in many ways has failed to be able to contain criminal behavior. In Memphis, Tennessee, and many places in the United States of America, particularly where our people live, you have situations where the state has engaged in its own criminal behavior, thrown the rock, and hidden its hand. In the case of Mexico, it's easy to kind of zoom out and accuse an entire country of being rogue, a rogue place where there is no rule of law and the criminals have taken over. But what do you do when the criminals are wearing the badge? What do you do when the criminals are the people you call on the phone and they show up and execute you and then hide behind sovereign immunity, qualified immunity, hide behind the power of the state? These two cases are not unrelated. In both instances, who ends up suffering are the people. In the case of Mexico, the people cry out to the state for help and intervention, and the state has proven in many ways to be incapable of rolling back the criminality. In the United States, in the city of Memphis, the people cry out for justice, and these concessions, these dozen or so have been fired, are a tiny step in the direction of justice. But never forget that criminality can wear a badge and criminality can be someone without a badge. But either way, the people have the power to transform the state, but we have to be organized to do that.
Folks, coming up next, we're going to talk about some transformative. First, we're going to talk about some performative politics by Republicans and Democrats when it came to D.C. setting their own laws, and we'll discuss what the Senate voted on yesterday. I want to give a shout out to some folks, though, who have given to us during the show. Tommy Williams, Huguette Duon, Letitia Cripe, Charlie Stokes, Kenneth Blair, Stephanie Avent, Taking Authority Consulting, Damien Blissett, Donald White, Charles McLaughlin. Guys, put the graphic up, please. Let's go. Thank you. Matthew Price, Shane Inez, Kalinda Lee, Renee Reese, Kelvin Lacey, Lydia Matthews, Gerald Atkins. Let me thank Marilyn Taylor Moye. Thank you so very much. Roxana Deshawn, Alvin Butler, Alakwa Bobbitt, let's see here, Elaine Irvin, Anthony Mosley, Theodore Green, Shantae, also Stephanie Smith, JD, let's see, Sally Jones, Takesha Lee, let's see here, Brandon Winford, JB Bond, Alenia Colvin, Damon Blissett, Samato Dabney, Eaton Hart, Richard Pettigrew, and let's see here, there's a couple of more here. Shelley Williams, Preston, Rosalind Jones, Javago Domino, Gwen, Tylonda Smith, Daryl Somerville, Freddie Ray, Cordell McMillan, Dolores McKeever, Rodney Jennings, Alan Austin, Black Virginia News, Miri Dotson, Craig Wilson, Claudia Douglas, Smith, William Fulton, Kenneth Pierce, Leisha Jackson, Monique Clark, SW, Kenneth Davis, also Vanessa Howard, Robert Jones, Chef Tino, Fern Clement, Sandra Hill, Lakeisha Moore, Sue Horton, William Rogers, Lisa Hall, Jeffrey Carter, Nicole, Gator Bait, William Rogers, Cass Rivers, Shannon Gray, Charlotte Gresham, Carla Sutton, Carl McKenzie, Zelma Hall, Francis Mitchell, Patricia Dennis, Mark Abrams, Ann Williams, Anita Parham, C. Rivera, Cecily Bennett Allen, Hassan, Bobby Anderson, Andre Wilson, Kim Elliott, Shirley Williams, Robert Brown, Kimberly Bailey, Maya Cameron, Shermonica, Scott, Tiffany Told. I want to thank all the folks who gave. Send check and money on P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com. roland@rolandmartinunfiltered.com. Like I said, folks, literally our monthly expenses for the entire network for this show, all staff, rent, everything is $185,000 a month. That's what it costs to fund all of this. And so when you're watching this show, when you're on YouTube and on our app, trust me, it is not free. Staff ain't free, lights not free, rent's not free, none of that stuff is free. And so this is what we're all about. We're fighting, of course, to get the advertising dollars, but your support plays a crucial role in us being able to keep our doors open and giving you the kind of content and the launching of our 24-hour streaming network as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, We've seen the headline. Major tech companies laying off. Google, Facebook, Twitter, just to name a few, and tens of thousands have been laid off as a result. On the next Get Wealthy, we take a look at what it means to recession-proof your career in tech. Joining me will be Kanika Tover, and she's going to be sharing exactly what you need to do to turn anxiety into achievement.
Shifting our mindset to thinking that only opportunities exist in big tech is something that we're going to have to shift fast, because there's so many opportunities that are out there that we have to change the way we were thinking about our careers.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
On the next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, just who do you think you are? And maybe more importantly, who is it that you think you're trying to please? The answer to that second question is really wrapped up in the first. Think about that. Being the true, authentic you, no matter the circumstance.
But we learn the art of forgiveness, not only of forgiving one another, but forgiving ourselves. And we also learn how to love ourselves so that we can love each other.
That's next on A Balanced Life, here on Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Gavin Houston.
Hi, I'm Carl Payne.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
So in an act of performative politics, the United States Senate folks blocked a Washington, D.C. City Council proposed criminal code change. And remember, the City Council already said they had actually pulled it back. But on Wednesday, Senate Democrats voted along with Republicans to overturn this change, which some would say ease criminal penalties in a city already suffering from rising crime. The final tally was 81-14. You had lots of Democrats, Greg, who wanted to prove that they're tough on the crime as Republicans. A lot of these floor speeches were a joke, listening to individuals. I mean, there was one guy from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who was complaining about, the impact of this on carjacking when his own state does not have a specific law dealing with that. There was so many of these people who were just full of BS, and most of them had not even bothered to talk to folks in D.C. about the change to their code.
No, Roland. In fact, you know this better than I do, brother. Many years ago, I think it was Itabari and Jerry wrote a book called The Last Plantation. Washington, D.C. isn't the last plantation, the Virgin Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico. But Washington, D.C. in many ways is certainly the most offensive plantation in the continent, on the actual North American continent, because the people don't have self-governance. As you said, the city council chair, I think Phil Mendelssohn, they tried to pull the bill back, but that was performance theater. 81-14, the United States Senate voted against this D.C. overhaul over a century. They've been under these laws, and they want to overhaul them. Yes, it's a revised Criminal Code Act. If you're getting pinched in Southeast D.C., and you're talking about reduced sentences for everything from carjacking to robbery, and really getting rid of mandatory minimums and dealing with some of these other things, guess what? You should be able to do that if you have voted in an election. A minute ago, finally, Roland, you mentioned the fact that there are all these local elections about to go on. In Virginia, the whole legislature is up, the state legislature. Wisconsin, that Supreme Court case that is going on there, Supreme Court justice being elected there. Louisiana, Kentucky, and Mississippi, you got gubernatorial elections. Well, those people, regardless of the outcome of those elections, can say we participated in the political process. What does it mean to live in a city where you vote and your elected representatives say, we're going to ease the burden on some people who get caught up in a system because we don't want to have crime either. And then people from places where they call you the N-word like they eat breakfast every morning decide they're going to rule over you like they stand on some kind of damn porch in Mississippi in a plantation. This is the last plantation. It is indefensible. Joe Biden or Muriel Bowser. Let's just make it interracial and intersex. Both of you should be ashamed of yourselves. The will of the people of D.C. is to revise the criminal code. Damn it. Get out of the way.
Gotta love all the people who love talking about local control, Reese, who keep talking about small government and all that sort of stuff like that. But they spent their time voting on this. As if the voters in D.C. had not elected their own representatives to govern them.
Well, I mean, we have to talk about the fact that DC is still largely black. It's not Chocolate City the same way that it used to be. It's a little more espresso with some milk and stuff mixed in there. But the reality is like maybe iced coffee. How about that? But the reality is that, you know, one of the prevailing notions of the Republican Party specifically is for black people to not have full civic involvement. And so the Democrats got this one wrong in terms of joining in on approving this resolution. Now, the resolution had a veto-proof majority, but, you know, they need to stop the fear of being painted as easy on crime when the reality is it doesn't matter if you put 300, 400,000 more cops on the street, they're still going to paint you as being weak on crime. So this was a chance to really put your money where your mouth is with very little, blowback. But it's obvious that their fear of reprisal from black voters is not as much as their fear of reprisal from white voters who want to believe that the Democrats are soft on crime.
Erica?
Yeah, and one of the things that I think about is that DC is still one of the top 15 gentrified cities. When you think about, you know, some of the crime issues that are being put forward, you know, what type of resources are being snatched away from people that are being moved out of their neighborhood? So I agree with Greg and Reese on this. You know, this was definitely an easy win for the Democrats. They fell flat on their face. And they have to remember they're having to report to black voters because we are, for the Democrats, black women and black men are the largest share of voters within that party. And so when you look at DC, you cannot not look at black voters.
All right, folks, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they're suing Exxon Mobil with regards to, first of all, racial discrimination. The lawsuit claims the petrochemical giant failed to protect a black worker from harassment after nooses were found at his Baton Rouge complex. According to the EEOC's lawsuit, a black employee at Exxon's Mobil's chemical plant found a hangman's noose at his worksite in January 2020. Exxon Mobil knew that 3 other nooses had been displayed at the Baton Rouge complex when he reported the noose. The EEOC alleges that Exxon Mobil investigated some, but not all, of the prior incidents and failed to take measures reasonably calculated to end the harassment. After the employee reported the noose in January, a 5th noose was reported in December 2020 at the complex. The EEOC said that ExxonMobil's actions and omissions regarding the noose incidents created a racially hostile work environment. Well, damn, Reese, Exxon, you need 5 to know it's real?
For fuck's sake, you would think that the first one would be enough, but you know, you have no choice but to make the assumption that this was a feature and not a bug of the system. When you do not take action, then you are emboldening people to take this kind of really abhorrent racist behavior. And so the reality is that the comfort or just the basic right and humanity of their black employees was not a priority over making sure they don't piss off their white employees. But this is what happens, the EEOC's lawsuit, when you actually have a functioning civil rights department or you have functioning civil rights divisions within various departments, unlike what we saw under the Trump administration.
Erica?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that these workers that were impacted definitely sue the hell out of ExxonMobil, especially since they experienced record profits during the season where price for gas was just high for no damn reason. So, you know, all the more reason why, as Reese always says, black folks definitely need to be more litigious. We know that there's, you know, something coming forward, but I really do hope that they sue them not only for what they're owed, but because they also experience overflow because ExxonMobil definitely has it to give.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just sit here and again, for all the people who say, "Oh, just isolated incidents," Greg. Well, why do you think you have an EEOC? Go to their website and look at what they're investigating. Ain't no such thing as isolated.
No, sir. But Roland, again, man, you keep making these points over and over again, brother. This is why participating in the political process is so important. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which deals with employment discrimination, has been widely interpreted differently by different people depending on their politics. Nooses have been appearing as kind of proxies for everything from racial discrimination to intimidation at the workplace for decades. In fact, shout out to one of my students at Howard Law School, Alexa Walker, who was actually writing a paper about it this semester. We just talked about her paper last week. We were talking about employment discrimination, and she's writing about nooses. In fact, you might run into, again, talking about the federal bench, a district court judge who might say, yes, this noose was a threat, was seen as a threat leading it there. But if you can identify the people that did it or the workplace that enabled it, this could be seen as an instance of personal animus rather than racial animus. Now, this has happened when you find, for example, somebody who was threatening somebody by calling them the N-word, or and then they say, okay, well, they didn't call you that because they're racist. They call you that because they ain't like you. A noose is a lot more difficult to nuance because you're clearly trying to gesture toward this idea of lynching, of violence against Black people. But there are judges on the bench, and let's take a guess as to who those judges were appointed by, who might interpret the noose not as a racial threat, but as an attempt to intimidate that you have to demonstrate racial animus in terms of individual intent or structural intent as it relates to an employer to recover from. It's fallen on both sides. It isn't as simple and plain and open and shut as getting a monetary damage recovery or having some form of injunctive relief. It isn't that open and shut, which is why I agree with you, Reese. You've got to have an EEOC who is willing to go to battle with these folk, because sometimes it's really a case of who you get on the bench to decide whether or not you're going to get some relief.
Do want to do this here. So the New York Times is reporting that the Trump lawyers believe it is likely that he is going to be charged in the case of Stormy Daniels. Go to first of all, you have a lot of legal analysts who have to predict this stuff, but this is their story here. Trump was told that he could appear before a Manhattan grand jury next week if he wishes to testify, a strong indication that an indictment could soon follow. The man knows no bottom. The only way to get his attention is to indict his ass criminally. Remember, the lawsuit from Tish James was a civil one where they showed the Trump organization was fraudulent when it came to being tax cheats. And so I'm like, hurry the hell up. Somebody indict this SOB. Reese?
Well, it's about damn time, like Lizzo would say. He has been unindicted co-conspirator in the Michael Cohen case for years now. And so finally it's catching up to him. I'll believe it when I see it. But if this is where it's heading, then I'm all the way here for it.
It says right here in the article, Erica, such offers almost always indicate an indictment is close. It would be unusual for the district attorney, Alvin L. Bragg, to notify a potential defendant without ultimately seeking charges against him.
Okay. I mean, I'll believe it when I see the son of a Klansman in handcuffs or an indictment come down. I mean, Carolyn Bryant is still in somebody's nursing facility free, so we'll see.
Greg, it says any case would mark the first indictment of a former American president. It could upend the 2024 presidential race. It would also elevate Mr. Bragg to the national stage, though not without risk, and the conviction in the complex case is far from assured.
Absolutely. And remember, we saw Alvin Bragg already on the national stage last year in another situation. But we are in the Easter season, brother. A lot of people have accused you of being a minister, but I know you know the scripture well. So, it's around the time when the preachers start preaching the 7 last words of Christ. Into thy hands I commend my spirit. Well, and that's true. That's the 7 last words. But I must agree with my sisters, with Erica and with Reese. The 7 last words here, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, I agree with that, but I will say this here. Between Tish James finding them guilty, if Bragg indicts him, and then, of course, the Fulton County DA indicts him, guess what, Trump? You done hit the hat trick with black DAs. Can't wait for it to happen. Erica, Reese, Greg, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'll see y'all tomorrow, folks, right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black